my name is Rye, and welcome back to the channel. I hope that you're all having an amazing day and enjoying your January morning or afternoon or whenever you see this, or if it's even January for you when you are watching it. It's January for me. Today, as you saw in the title, we will be going over the rules for Battlecore's TCG. Now, the rules have been out for a little bit, and I've had a link put up on a couple different places, but this is the first time I've really gotten around to making that rules video. And of course, there will be a link to these rules right here in the comments below, as well as links to buying packs and other such useful stuff like that. So be sure to check it out. I pretty much always have at least something in the description below. But anyway, like I said, today we'll be going over the rules, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump on into this. These rules are, by the way, this one link should always be up to date. So if there's ever any rules changes or added to or taken away or whatever, if anything changes for whatever reason, or if any new keywords are introduced later on in later sets, then this will be updated to account for that. So this video may not always be updated, but these rules, the written rules here, will be updated, and if enough changes are made, then I will probably eventually make a video going over them, but most likely the main rules themselves will not change, just new keywords added or whatever, which in that case I'll just be going over them whenever I go over a card with that effect in a video. So it will be out there. It just might take a little bit more searching to hear an explanation from my mouth and not from my keyboard. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump on into it. So this is a game primarily for 2 to 4 players. You can technically play with more. I just think the experience is probably most enjoyable with 2 to 4 players. Each player brings a deck of 40 cards and a legend deck of up to 6 cards. The deck or main deck is made up of monster and support cards. Okay, so you must have, if you want to follow the rules strictly, or play competitively, which means you would need to follow the rules strictly. If you're playing casually, you can technically do whatever you want, you know, but if you're strictly trying to follow the rules, which I would advise, each player brings a deck of 40 cards, so you need 40 cards exactly, no more, no less. Like I said, they're made up of monster and support cards, but the legend deck, you don't have to run any. It says up to 6, so you can run at most 6 or fewer. You don't have to have exactly 6 or whatever to play, so don't worry about it if you just don't have many. Just run whatever you want to, pretty much, when it comes to when it comes to your legend deck, as long as it doesn't exceed 6. You may only have up to 4 copies of each card in the main deck, and 1 copy of each card in the legend deck. Now, this rule can be different depending on the card. There is, for the competitive scene, pretty much only, because casually, like I said, you don't technically need to follow most of the rules, since if you're just playing for fun, you know, do whatever's fun for you. But if you want to strictly follow the rules, there will be a ban list, and if I do put out a ban list, which I am planning on, then it will probably be put up on my, on this, not in this, rules, Lord help me, not in this place on the blog, because this is on my blog, not in this particular rules portion on the blog, but I'm probably going to make a separate page specifically for the ban list, and again, keep that updated. Lord willing, I won't need to do too many bans or restrictions or whatever, but some cards will inevitably need to be, looked at. And it will be updated with, it'll be updated regularly as it's needed. So, for the most part, every card applies to this 4 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the legend deck rule, but if it's on the ban list or restricted in any sort of way, you'll be able to see it on that page, and then in that case, you would only be able to run, for example, let's say Super Potato was overpowered, well, you could only run maybe 2 copies instead of 4, maybe that makes it reasonable, or maybe you can't run any copies at all because it's just way too strong, But yeah, anyway. Enough rambling. I'm probably going to go ahead and try to jump through and stop mansplaining and just actually go through the rules. At the start of a game, each player starts with 30 HP and will draw 7 cards from their main deck. Very, very simple. So at the start of the game, you and your up to 3 other friends, or even more if you really, really want to, have 30 health, and your starting hand will have 7 cards in it from the main deck, so from your deck made up of monster and support cards. Before deciding who goes first, you may choose to mulligan. Mulligan is when you shuffle your starting hand back into the main deck and then draw a new hand of cards with one less than your hand had in it before the mulligan. Example, you may mulligan with a hand of 5 cards, then you'd now have a hand of 4 cards. It's basically a way of re-rolling the dice, is one way you could put it. It's just to try to get a better starting hand. But the rule of having 1 less card in it than you had before is in place so people don't just mulligan again and again and again until they get the perfect hand, because then that would be kind of boring. Very, very useful. Do not be afraid to. I just wouldn't advise doing it too much or too often. Once all players are ready to start, then decide who goes first. You can do that by any means. The examples I provided are just examples. They're options. Flipping a coin, rolling dice, however you want to do it. At the start of your turn, you gain points equal to the number, At the start of your turn, gain points equal to the turn number besides the first turn, because every player gains 1 point at the start of the game. It's very simple. If it's turn 3 and it's the start of your turn, then you have 3 points. If it's turn 12, you have 12 points to play with. But if it's turn 1, every player starts with 1 point. Every player starts with 1 point at the start of the game, so there's no need to try to gain any points or anything, and that's just so, let's say the player that goes first plays a couple cards or whatever and tries to attack with 1. That means that you would have at least something to use to counter, to answer to that instead of just taking it. Most of the time you will, but maybe you happen to have an attack rebound in your hand and you're okay with spending all of your points for turn 1 on using that attack rebound to send it back and take out one of their cards. Typically you're just gonna probably take it, but if you have a good answer, you have 1 point to play with, even if your first turn hasn't technically started yet. Any points left over from the previous turn are lost at the start of your next turn. That's right, so there's no accumulating points. There's no, if you do some powerful combo that leaves you with 5 extra points on turn 2, and then you decide to just pass turn so that you would have 5 additional points, so have 8 points on turn 3, that won't happen because any leftover points are just reset. So try to use as many of your points in your turn as you can. Try to get as much value out of every point given on every single turn as you can. At the start of your turn, you draw 1 card from the main deck, except for the first turn if you're going first. It's really the main downside of going first is that you don't get to draw a card for your first turn. It's pretty much the only downside, really. Going first is really, really strong, but it is something nice to just have an extra card in your hand if you're not going first to help you make up for lost time. On to the next portion. Speaking of turns, your turn is broken up into 3 different phases. These phases define what kinds of actions can be taken at each point of your turn. The phases are the main phase, battle phase, and end phase. First is the main phase, and during this phase, you may summon monsters, activate boost cards, or activate boost, field, item, and gear cards, and summon legend cards. To summon a monster or activate a support card, you must spend points equal to its price. The price is the white number up in the right-hand corner, next to the name. During the battle phase, also known as the fight phase, earlier on in making this game, I wasn't 100% sure on the namings of some of these things, so sometimes you'll see battle phase, sometimes you'll see fight phase. Eventually everything will be changed to the proper definition, but just in case, that's there so that you're aware, like, oh, what's a fight phase? It's the battle phase, just another name for it. But yes, during the battle phase, you may attack with your monster cards, activate trap cards, and attack with gear cards. By the way, legend cards are also tied up in that monster card collection, sorta. It's kind of like how a square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. That's kind of how legend cards work, where anything that applies to monster cards also applies to legend cards, but not everything that applies to legend cards apply to monster cards. So if, let's say, there was an effect that specifically says, oh, your monster cards gain some benefit, that would also apply to legend cards, but if it specified your legend cards gain this benefit, then your normal monster cards would not get that benefit. Just to let you know, so yes, you can attack with legend cards during the battle phase. Monster cards cannot attack the turn they're summoned or if they're tempered. If a card is tempered, also known as tapped, I made a mistake in a recent card and put the term tap from Magic the Gathering instead of temper, but it's okay. Also known as tapped, then that means that it has been used and all temper cards get untempered at the start of your turn. If you're familiar with Magic the Gathering and tapping, tempering works the exact same way. Turn it sideways, oh, it's been used. You turn the card sideways to show when it is tempered. It says right there you go. When a monster card attacks, they target another monster card and reduce the target's armor by the attacking monster's power. If the armor is reduced to less than 1, then the monster is discarded. All reduced armor is reset to its total at the start of the owner's turn. So this means that you can slowly whittle the armor down, but whether you're taking the card out in multiple smaller attacks or in one large attack, it needs to be reduced below 1 or reduced to 0 or less, all within one turn to take out the card. If you only take it down to half of its armor before you end your turn, then you're not going to be able to take it out. So that's just how that works. It works pretty much exactly the same as Magic the Gathering toughness works. Where am I? I lost my place. Right, there I am. If a player has no monster cards in play, then they can be attacked directly, reducing the player's HP by the power of the attacking monster. So that's how you reduce health. After an attack is made, the attacking card is tempered. During the end phase, you may do the same things as the main phase. There are 3 categories of cards, being monster, support, and legend cards. And this is just where we'll be going over everything that there is to possibly know about these cards. Monster cards have 5 properties to be aware of: name, price, types, stats, and the effect. The name is the identification of a card. You will see this little description of the name in every single card type, and you could see the names as just whatever's just the name of the card, but it actually does matter, because if it's named in the effect of a particular card, then that's how you know which card it's talking about. I know it's kind of a well duh moment, obviously, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. So, anyway, the price is the amount of points you need to spend to play the card from hand to field. The field is just another name for taking it from your hand or from wherever and placing it down in play to where it's able to actually do things. If there are 2 different types of each card being... There are 2 different types of each card, being the elemental type, and some examples are Fire, Nature, Dark. It is the first type that you see on each card. And the descriptive type, being examples being Plant, Alien, Beast, which is the second type that you see on each card, on each monster and legend card. There are 2 different stats, being the power, the right number, and the armor, the left number. Which are, like I said, the numbers in the bottom right-hand corner. The power is the offensive ability of the monster and how much damage is done when attacking. The armor is the defensive ability of the monster and how much damage the monster takes in a turn to be discarded. And then the final portion, the effect is unique to each monster and is something extra they can do outside of just simply attacking or being attacked. Next, support cards have 4 properties to be aware of, being name, price, category, and the effect. The name is the identification of a card. The price is the amount of points you need to spend to activate the card. Support cards are split into 5 different categories, being boost, trap, item, field, and gear cards. You can kind of think of these as being their types. I also use the term type when talking about these categories, so don't get confused. Boost cards can be activated during the main and end phase, but only on your turn. Trap cards can be activated during the battle phase and on any player's turn. Item cards can be activated during the main and end phase, but only on your turn. When item cards are activated, you equip them to 1 active monster card. How equipping works is you pretty much just put the card underneath the monster you're trying to equip it to, and its effects typically either only or primarily interact with that card that it's equipped to. For example, Ring of Power says +1/+0, so it adds 1 power. So it would be adding 1 power to whatever card it's equipped to. Once you activate a field card, I skipped one. Field cards can be activated during the main or end phase, but only on your turn. Pretty much only trap cards can be activated during the battle phase, and only trap cards can be activated on either player's turn. Once you activate a field card, they stay in play on the field. So instead of being used and gotten rid of, kind of like item cards, they just stay there. But unlike item cards, they aren't equipped to anything, they just sit there and kind of have a passive effect that they give to everything. In most cases, at least. Not in every case, of course. Like, for example, Tree Vitality. Tree Vitality gives nature monsters +1/+1 and survival. That is a passive effect. It's constantly being given out. So as soon as you play it, they all are gaining that effect. Let's see. Right, okay. Gear cards so gear cards can be activated again during the main or end phase, but only on your turn. Gear cards have two stats, being power and durability. The power is how much damage is done. Sorry for cracking my knuckles. The power is how much damage is done when attacking with a gear card. Durability goes down by 1 every time an attack is made with a gear card, and when it reaches 0, it is discarded. When gear cards are activated, they're equipped onto the player, and you can only have one equipped at once. So they're kind of like item cards for players. But unlike item cards, you cannot have as many equipped as you want. Just a one. And they pretty much just give you the ability to attack the opponent if you want to. But attacking with them works the exact same way as like attacking with a monster card, where you must attack the opponent's monsters before you're able to attack them directly, unless otherwise stated, and all that good stuff. The effect is what the support card does when activated. It's in most cases just simply what the card does, since they, besides for gear cards, they don't have stats to go off of or anything else to use. And on to the final type. Legend cards have 4 properties to be aware of: name, types, stats, and the effect. The name is the identification of a card, you already know that. There are 2 different types on each card, same thing as monster cards, an elemental type, which is the first type being up top. Examples are water, light, and earth, and the descriptive type, the type on the bottom. Examples being robot, food, and elemental. There are 2 different stats, being the power and the armor. They function the exact same way as monster cards, so I'm going to skip over them. The effect is unique to each legend card and is something extra they can do outside of just simply attacking or being attacked. At the start of every legend card's effect is a summon with a parentheses next to it. This part of the effect states the requirements to play the card. Example, summon 1 active beast monster. You'd need to discard 1 beast type monster card from your field in order to play the legend card. The summon effect acts as the legend card's price. I don't really feel like I need to explain any further. I feel like that's a pretty good explanation. It's just that's the price, and you need to discard whatever's in the parentheses, unless otherwise stated, of course. The next part, and the most recently added thing, you will not, by the way, this next part is going over an errata. An errata is something that you're not going to see before set 4. So if you're not playing with any set 4 cards or beyond, then you don't really need to worry about it. But since I'm currently working on set 4, which means that the errata is now a thing, then it's good to be aware of it. An errata is a card from a previous set being released into another set, besides mini-sets. Any previous set cards released in mini-sets are just reprints of the previous card. They're exactly the same. They're just there to keep the cards from rotating out as soon. Set rotation is something that is in this game, so you can only have 3 sets and 3 mini-sets in play at once, or usable for when it comes to competitive scene. Like I said, if you're playing casually, play with whatever cards you want. Don't worry about it. You don't need to just go off and constantly be getting new cards, but if you want to play competitively, you will need to be aware of set rotation. So with set 4 being made, once it's released, then set 1's cards will rotate out and no longer be playable unless they are reprinted in a mini set, or in the case of erratas, put into one of these main sets. So yeah, just this mainly, or set rotation mainly applies to competitive players, but anyway. Let me reread. An errata is a card from a previous set being released into another set, with 1 or more changes from the original release. You can tell if it is an errata by seeing in brackets set and a number, in white, in or close to the bottom right hand corner of the card. So for monster cards, it will typically be like right above the stats. For legend cards, it'll be right to the left of the stats typically, or right above, somewhere around there. And then for support cards, since they don't have anything in that bottom right hand corner, it's just in the right hand corner down there. Alright, let's see. Right. You can tell if it is an errata by seeing, like I said, in the parentheses set and a number, in white, in the or close to the bottom right hand corner of the card. The number is stating from which set onwards the changes will apply. That is good to know, because let's say you're running a little tournament with you and a couple friends, but you want to run set 2's metagame. Well, if a card from set 1 or set 2 was errated later on in set 4 onward, or whatever set, then you would play with that set 2's version of that card, so the pre-errata version, if you want to play with those original cards. Because the errata will only apply to metagames using that set and onward. But for the most part, you don't really need to worry about it. Just know, oh, if you draw a card that has a particular set number on it, and for example, that's the most recent set released or whatever, then you know this is the new way this card works. So even these old versions of the cards that I have, if you want to play strictly according to the rules, they now work the way the errated card works. So let's say a card says draw 3 cards, but then this new errated version only says draw 2 cards, then even those old versions would now work the way that the new one does. So they would now just draw 2 cards. It's a little weird, but this is mainly just for balancing. I use this to either change the effects of poorly written like earlier made cards effects. So cards that just, I don't feel like I worded very well to really understand how they're supposed to work. Or cards that have any sort of mistakes when it comes to naming. That's where this would come in. You know, I could, for example, change fight phase to battle phase, or tapped to tempered, so on and so forth. But then I can also use them to buff old cards or nerf broken cards. But for the most part, it'll be a lot more of just kind of fixing grammatical issues. Unlike the main deck, which you'd need to draw cards from in order to play them, you always have access to the cards in your legend deck. All you need to play a legend card is to pay its summon effect. And then you can play the legend card straight from your legend deck. You never draw from your legend deck. Your legend deck is kind of like a second hand. It's just always there, sitting there, waiting to be played. They're very, very useful, and often some of the primary cards and playmakers of any sort of deck, but not always. Just like how your legend cards have a separate deck from your monster and support cards, they also have a separate ground zone or discard pile. The ground zone is just the discard pile for this game. Effects interacting with the ground zone, unless specifying the legend ground zone, cannot interact with your discarded legend cards. If a player's HP is reduced to 0, or if they try to draw from their main deck while having 0 cards, then that player loses and is out. If there are more than one player who hasn't lost yet, then they continue playing until either all but one player has lost, or all remaining players concede to a draw or tie. So you either win by reducing the other player's HP to 0, or reducing all of the cards in their deck to 0 and they try to draw from it and there's nothing there. Or you can decide to just have it be a draw. If all remaining players who are still in play say, you know, it's okay, it's just a tie, we're gonna end it here. This is the part that is liable to change. So all those before, as far as I know, I don't think there's anything else I need to go over. Yeah, all these before are the rules of the game and what you need to know to play it. These are the keywords and everything. It's quite a lengthy list. There's a lot of keywords to be aware of. Do not be intimidated. Most of them are fairly simple, and you don't always need to have all these memorized. Again, this is always available. You can always just go back to the rules and look something up if you're ever confused about something. That's what the rules are for. But these are the keywords, and like I said, this is the portion of the rules that is most liable to change, so always be ready to go back and check on in this rules post to see a description of what it means or how it works. Anyway, summon, a keyword. Summon means to put the card in play. Very simple, you just pay its price and put it in play. Quick summon means to put the card in play ignoring its price, so it's just a free summon. Search means to look through the deck, pick a card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. If a card effect specifies... Well, actually, it says in the next part, sorry. If an effect says to summon, quick summon, or search a card, or cards, and the effect does not specify from where, then it means from the main deck. Example, search one monster card means to search from the main deck. So, as a, as the opposite of that would imply, if it does specify from somewhere, then that means that you can do these actions, whether it's summoning, quick summoning, or searching, from these other areas. So, a great example is Wuggle Test. It says that you can search one alien monster from deck or ground zone. That means that you don't just search them from the main deck, you can also search them from the ground zone, your discard pile, if you so please. The next one is Startup, with a parentheses next to it. It means that the effect in the parentheses, or whatever's in that parentheses, will activate when the card is summoned. So whenever it's put in play, it's typically a one-time effect. You put it in play and the thing happens. Ender is the opposite, so instead of whenever it's put in play, it's when the card is discarded. Victory means that whenever that monster or legend attacks another card, taking it out, discarding it, then the effect in the parentheses happens. And Upkeep means that the effect activates at the start of the turn. Unless it's the turn that's summoned, then it functions like a startup effect. But every consecutive turn, it's at the start of the turn, like whenever you draw a card and untap your creatures and get your points and all that good stuff. Upkeep effects are pretty much just once per turn effects that happen at the start of the turn. Price means that whatever is in the parentheses is what needs to be spent or discarded in order to summon or activate the card. Some cards will have a question mark in the price area. So instead of having a number there, it'll have a question mark. That means that at the start of the effect, it will have one of these price effect. You'll have price and then the parentheses, and just it functions exactly the same way as Legend Card's summon effects. Just whatever's in the parentheses, that's what you need to discard or use up in order to put the card in play. Trade, with the parentheses next to it, means that you can discard the hand or the card from hand or field, and if you do, then the stuff in the parentheses happens. It's not like the ender effect. This doesn't happen when it's discarded. It happens when you choose to discard it yourself by using this trade effect, because the trade effect means that you can just go ahead and discard it from hand or from the field to get that effect off. Temper means temper with a parentheses next to it means that you must temper the card or tap it in order to get the effect in the parentheses. Alright. That's, as far as I know, that is all of the keyword with the parentheses next to it effect. Now on to the other keywords that are just a single word or a very short phrase that has to do with the game mechanic. Active means that the card can attack the turn it's summoned. So if you remember with Monster and Legend cards, they cannot attack the turn they're summoned. If they have active, they can. Speed means that they just gain an additional attack during the battle phase that does not temper them. It's a free attack. And that free attack is not affected by the not being able to attack the turn that's summoned, because it's an additional free attack. That can't attack the turn that's summoned only applies to the cards like normal attack that every monster card inherently comes with. And speed can be stacked. Pretty much what I mean by stacked is that you can have multiple of them. So if you see a card effect that has speed with a little parentheses and a number next to it, that means that you would gain that many attacks. Speed, like the next effect, survival, if it just says speed, it's kind of understood to have a parentheses next to it with the 1 in there, saying that you gain 1 additional attack. But to save me having to type out that parentheses and a 1 every single time, I just put speed. But if you are gaining multiple speeds, multiple attacks, that, additional attacks that turn, then you would see the parentheses with a number in it. Survival means that if the card's armor would be reduced below 1, instead it's reduced to 1, and then the card loses survival. Survival can also be stacked, and each time that the card would be taken out by having their armor reduced to 0, they would just lose 1 armor, go to 1, or not armor, they would lose 1 survival and go to 1 armor, and so they would need to be attacked lethally for each survival that they have, and then attacked again to actually take them out. But it's just a defensive ability. And feel free to pause the video and read, or go, like I said, down to the link below and read through these yourself. It might make more sense than having me try to explain them to you quickly. True Strike means that this card, or that when this card is attacked, or is attacking, let me restart. True Strike means that when this card is attacking, every point of the attacker's power above the target's armor is done to the owner of the target card in damage. It's kind of hard for me to explain this one. It's not a very complicated thing, it's just I struggle to explain how it works. I feel like it's best to give an example, and the example I gave I feel like is fairly good. If the attacker has 3 power and the target has 1 armor, then the opposing player, or the owner of the defending card, the opposing player would take 2 damage. So it's just simple subtraction. You would take away from the power of the attacking card by the armor of the card being attacked, or the target's card. And if they have any power left, so like I said in this case, with 3 power versus 1 armor, you would have 2 power left, then those 2 points of power would continue to go on to deal damage to the opponent. It's really strong with cards that have high power stats. Duplicate. Duplicate means that when this card is summoned, unless otherwise stated, you would make a token copy of this card without duplicate. Losing duplicate only applies if the card says duplicate, but if it's part of another effect like victory duplicate, then duplicate is not removed. I don't know why there is a... I don't know why this is there. I'll go back and edit it after the recording. That should not be there. But anyway. But yeah, so pretty much a token, I go over down here. But a token is kind of like, it's pretty much a monster card that doesn't have a physical card to represent it. That's pretty much all it is. And it works like the legend cards, where anything that applies to monsters also applies to tokens, but things that specifically apply to tokens do not apply to normal monster cards. Anywho, where am I? That's right. So duplicate just makes a non-physical card copy of whatever the card is. Next is elusive. Elusive means that this card cannot be targeted for an attack or blocked by cards that do not have elusive. Very, very simple. So just, they can't be attacked, or in the case of cards with defender, blocked by cards that don't have elusive. Elusive cards are free to attack whatever they want, like whatever creatures in play, or if the opponent doesn't have any monsters in play, then, you know, of course they can attack the opponent directly, but it just gives them some extra protection. If the only monster you have on the field is a card with elusive, and the opponent does not have a monster that can hit elusives, they can attack you directly. Pretty simple. This just keeps you from locking the opponent out of playing the game just for playing a single Ghost Flame or something. If they can't hit your card because it has elusive, or can't be targeted for whatever reason or something, and you don't have anything else in play they can target, they just get to attack you directly. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. Anyway. Defender means that this card trades its normal attack for a block. A block is when you change the target of an attack to the one blocking. While blocking an attack, the blocker deals damage to the attacker equal to its power. I feel like that's a pretty good description. I don't feel like I really need to explain any further on that. Range means that you can choose to attack the opponent directly even if they have monsters cards in play. Very simple, just like it says. Even if they have a whole field of 20,000 monsters in play, you can choose to attack the opponent directly anyway. Pretty useful. One of the more rare effects, but it's pretty good. Token is a cardless monster card. Very simple. Tokens are cardless monster cards. They can do everything that monsters can do, but when discarded, instead of going to the ground zone, they are taken out of the game. Tokens are monsters that only exist while in play, I feel like is a good way of explaining how they work. Yeah, they're very simple. I like them. Burn is damage done by card effects. Very, very simple. So, especially in some of the earlier on cards, but throughout the whole game, you will see effects that have to do with burn damage. as it says, it's probably the shortest description here. Burn is damage done by card effects. And unless otherwise stated, if it just says do a certain amount of burn damage, then that means that it's being done directly to the opponent's health. But if it says to a target, that means that you get to choose what you're doing the damage to. Very, very simple. Works a lot like the summon, quick summon, and search effects. If it doesn't specify, then it's assumed directly to the opponent. If it is specified, then it can be done to whatever it's specifying. A counter is a resource that is equipped directly to cards in play and can be spent by certain card effects. Only cards with effects that specify the ability can interact with counters. Only cards with effects that specify the ability to interact with counters can interact with counters. So, for example, Orba de Boros, one of the newer cards, is a great example of a card that interacts with counters. If that card can do what it does with counters because it specifically says, whereas if you found a way to put counters onto something like a super potato, it wouldn't be able to do anything with them because its effect doesn't say that it can do anything with them. But counters are kind of just like a separate resource, like it says, that are equipped directly onto cards. Alright, so this one's one that looks weird, and you won't see it in this format on a typical card, because instead of question marks, it'll actually have like text there. But this is just used. I'll quickly read it and very briefly explain, because it's not very complicated. The first two question marks this way is what you need to do. The second, so this one, is what you will get in return for doing the first. So typically you'll either see something like temper or 2 points or discard a handed card or whatever, right? Or like one-handed card or something, right? Basically, you'd need to do or spend whatever is on this side of the colon, and whatever is on this side of the colon, whatever's to the left of the colon, is what you would get for doing that. One of the earliest examples I can think of is Frizz. Frizz allows you to pay 1 point to give it +1/+1. Very simple. 1 point is right here. Gain +1/+1 is right here. Yeah, so that's, as far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's everything that needs to be gone over with the game. So yeah, I hope that you all have a blessed day and have fun playing the game and everything now that you know how to play it. And yeah, fare thee well.